For the last week, right here on Instagram and on TV, you've heard me talk a lot about a documentary being released today, Juneteenth, Invisible Portraits. It is a movie, a documentary about the history of Black women in America, their plight, their struggles, their future. You might say, why is this a big deal for Stephanie Ruhle? Why do I care about it so much? Even if racial equality wasn't a priority for me, the reason I care about this film so much is exactly why the director made it. She said this movie is a love story for Black women, but it's a re-education for everyone else. And we need that re-education. Why? Because I have 3 kids, and my number one goal in life is to give my kids a world that is better and smarter than the one I was given. And I don't want my kids to grow up colorblind. I want my kids to live in a world that is culturally rich. This movie is so important. It's out today on Vimeo. You can rent it, you can buy it. I highly recommend it. It's really important to understand these stories, understand every American, because every person in this country is what makes it great. And Black women, as Malcolm X said 60 years ago, the Black woman is the most neglected, disrespected person in this country. 60 years later, the fact that that still rings true means it is time urgently to change that. And we could start doing that today. We don't have to wait for government. We don't have to wait for business. We can do it. We're talking a lot about what COVID is doing to us economically, the huge need for American food banks, all the people now on SNAP benefits, people who are struggling to put food on the table or try to get that dollar to stretch the farthest. Try to go to that grocery store the least amount as possible. Well, you can join me in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to be using the Good and Cheap Cookbook to try to make the most economical recipes and keep my family safe, healthy, and full. It's going to be pretty good, hopefully delicious. Like everybody, we're talking about the Postal Service because we hear more and more about the failing Postal Service. And because the Postal Service is losing so much money, that's why they've had to change their services, which have caused these mail delays. Well, you know what? That's just not true. Let's start with the fact that the Postal Service is failing. It's not failing. One of the reasons they're having financial difficulties is from funding pensions, not because they're not serving the American people. And it is not the Postal Service's mission to be profitable. The mission is to serve the American people. And in April, Pew Research did a survey, and 91% of those surveyed said they were happy with the Postal Service. In fact, they were happier with the Postal Service than any other agency. And let's compare it to other government agencies. I'm talking money. Department of Education, Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, Department of Defense. None of them make money. In fact, the Pentagon's budget last year alone, they had $35 trillion with a T, trillion dollars in accounting adjustments. Okay? That's more than the U.S. economy. So let's just put that aside from the fact that the U.S. Postal Service is failing. It's not failing. But let's talk about what delaying the mail does do to the American people. The VA, for example. The VA gets veterans across this country their prescriptions via the U.S. Postal Service. If you're not getting your prescription on time, that has a huge impact on you. And let's talk about small businesses in America or people in rural America. That's how they get their Social Security check. But small businesses, we've been talking about them since the pandemic started. 30,000 small businesses have already shut permanently, with more than half concerned that they might. Well, something that they are dependent on are supply chains and shipping. Think about all the retailers. We've now said, well, brick and mortar has gotten more challenged. You're going to have to go online. Well, if you go online, you are oftentimes dependent on things like the U.S. Postal Service. Now, if you're a monster big business, if you're Amazon, if you're Walmart, you've got a lot more control over shipping, a lot more control over the supply chain. If you're a small business, that's a huge issue for you, shipping, supply chain, and you can't control it. So if the USPS suddenly decides to put the brakes or at least a pause on things, it has a huge impact. So we're talking health, well-being, economics. Those delays, yes, they can have a huge impact on our upcoming election, but right now, they're having a huge impact on everyday Americans. Pay attention to this. Hey there, every day we talk to you about the economic storm we're facing because of the health crisis. But right now I'm coming to you from my living room because of the massive weather storm, the tropical storm that we're facing. We've lost power, so here we are, just you and me. But we can't forget to cover this economic storm and continue to tell the stories of the people and businesses that are struggling. And today it's restaurants. The most recent estimates say that 1/3 of independent restaurants, independent, that means your favorite bar, your favorite romantic restaurant, your favorite place that you love to take your dad to for burgers, they're at risk of closing. Closing because what this pandemic has done is so damaging. Over 20 million people have lost work in the restaurant industry, and they can't go back to work if there's no job to go to. There's now a bill before Congress looking for $120 billion specifically for the food and beverage industry. We know that PPP did help a lot of businesses, but the way it was structured and the timeline didn't really do much or didn't do enough for restaurants. We know that over half of restaurants in New York City didn't pay their full rent in June. They have huge pressure on them to cover their biggest expense, New York City rent. But guess what they can't do? Even be open to get business done. So we've got to continue to focus on this. If we want to keep American business and American restaurants, that is a core part of American culture. This week, I had the honor of being part of my friend Maria Shriver's Sunday paper, and I authored the to-be list, my list of what I'd like to be. And it's funny, like while things are so crazy and chaotic during coronavirus, you tend to forget your goals. But because I had this homework assignment from Maria, I had to write them down. And I realized how important it was. So for me, it was about the fact that I want to be confident. I don't want to sound confident. I don't want to look confident. I want to actually be confident. For me, I don't want to need to win the room in order to feel safe there. And what that's about is about feeling okay, about your confidence coming from within, not others telling you you're good enough. For me, I want to be the person who actually listens more and talks less. I know that probably doesn't sound like something I want, but it actually is. And I want to feel comfortable doing nothing. And more importantly, I want to feel comfortable with my kids doing nothing. And when my kids screw up, and you know they will, or when they've got themselves in trouble, I don't want to blame it like I always do on the fact that I work all the time. While we're home during Corona, many of us, we've got a lot of time to reflect. So let's take this time to actually reflect, write down our goals. And now that I've written my to-be list, today my homework's even harder. I have to start doing it. So I invite you to write your own to-be list. And I want to thank Maria and everyone at the Sunday paper for giving me this assignment. Now I got my real work. Last week, Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin said the economy is so important. While coronavirus isn't away from us, he said we cannot shut down the economy again. And what happened over the weekend? Apple chose to close temporarily a number of their stores. We saw in the state of Texas, where the virus numbers went up, we saw a number of businesses temporarily close again. Here's what you need to remember. Businesses decide whether or not they want to close. So while the Treasury Secretary can say, we will not do this again, we cannot ignore the signs. Governor Cuomo said it today, we're a slave to the signs. But we have to pay attention to the signs. But because while we can say, no, everything is fine, you can't necessarily say that, especially when you've got states across the country, 24 at this point, seeing the virus numbers go up. What we need to do is be responsible. Regionally reopen, using data, using science, wearing masks, social distancing. So remember, there are no complete black or whites. You cannot have the Treasury Secretary say, we're not shutting down the economy again. It's not his call. Today at noon, I will be taking over Today Show's Instagram for an IG live chat about first-time home buying. I know how frustrated people are right now. They've saved up, they're ready to buy, and they can't seem to get a home. If you've got questions, comment below and we'll answer them during our live chat, or tune in Instagram Live, Today Show's handle. Meet us at 12. Bring your questions. 5 o'clock is approaching. No, it doesn't mean it's cocktail hour. It means it's time for you to go to NBC News Facebook page, where at 5 p.m. I'm going to be doing a Q&A on all things around the corona impact on the economy and this new Senate bill that was just passed, making its way to the House. We're going to discuss what it means for you. Good morning. I know it is a stressful time. Because of coronavirus, so many businesses have been forced to temporarily shut down, and that has caused many businesses to furlough or lay off millions of workers. And a lot of those people aren't just asking themselves, do I need to be tested for COVID-19? Do I need to apply for unemployment benefits? What benefits are available to me now that I'm not working? Well, here's the positive news. The federal government has changed the rules. They have mandated anyone who has been laid off, quarantined, or forced to stay home to take care of someone because of corona, well, they're eligible to apply for unemployment. Now, here's what's important. It's a state-by-state basis. So go on your state's website, make sure it's .gov, not .com, and look up unemployment. From there, you're going to have to give your Social Security, your state ID, and answer a whole lot of questions about how much money you make and where that money comes from. Important to note, you have to check in every couple of weeks. That money isn't automatic. And normally, once you're approved, it takes 3 to 6 weeks for that check to come in. But the good news is, lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are urging to get that money expedited, get those benefits out there. And they've waived the 7-day period most people have to wait after they lose their job. This is a really difficult time, but know there are measures out there to help you. Keep checking in with us and check your state's website to find out more. I want to say thank you, Amy Schumer. Thank you for posting what new motherhood looks like, because it's not the good, the bad, and the ugly. You're making it all beautiful. And to haters out there who are judging her, for those who questioned that she went to the Comedy Cellar for 2 hours to go to work, please, you need to look at your own schedule. Have none of us wasted 2 hours shopping online, talking on the phone to our sister, or doing whatever we want? And maybe that's not wasting time. Maybe that's self-care. Because you know what else it is for her? It's her job. When a new father leaves home and goes to work, we consider him going to work and making money for the family his form of caregiving. Maybe we should start to look at women that way, instead of looking at a mother every time she's on a business trip and asking, who's taking care of your kids? So bravo to Amy Schumer, that she went to the Comedy Cellar. She made a whole group of people laugh, and she built her brand. She's doing a great service for women everywhere. And